Oh my god. This episode was bananas. Yes, the 4th episode of Loki has dropped, and in case you haven't heard by now, it's pretty insane. A lot of things happened in this episode, a lot of things that blew my mind. I feel like maybe it is to make up for last week's episode, where it was informative, sure, but it did feel pretty slow. I will say one thing though, it does feel like it's been longer since episode 3. Like, I feel like it's been like 2 weeks. Time seems to be passing slower between episodes now. I blame the TVA. But anyway, I'm gonna give you a spoiler warning as per usual. If you have not watched the 4th episode of Loki titled The Nexus Event, then you should probably steer clear of this video, unless you don't care. In which case, I'm pretty flattered. Alright, let's dive into this episode. This is probably the best episode of the season so far. And it starts out on Asgard. So immediately it's throwing us the unexpected right out the gate. I'm always happy to see Asgard again, like when it showed up in Avengers Endgame, I was like, oh yeah, Asgard, it's nice to see it again because it was destroyed. But this Asgard in this episode, it's not our Asgard, it's Sylvie's Asgard. Because we see young Sylvie, yeah, so she is from Asgard. So that does confirm that yes, she is in fact a Loki variant. She is another version of Loki from another universe. So it is like the Lutesses from BioShock Infinite. Alright, good to know. I was right. And so young Sylvie is just hanging out by herself doing nothing, when all of a sudden she's captured by the TVA for seemingly no reason at all. They arrived, they're just like, yup, here's the variant, let's bring her in. And as we hear Sylvie explain later in the episode, I guess she was brought in because she is not the Loki that's supposed to exist in the sacred timeline. She explains that the universe wants to break free, so it manifests chaos, aka Nexus events, that's how I see it. And so I guess the TVA was created to keep the universe in check, to keep it from breaking free, to keep it from manifesting chaos. So I guess that's why Sylvie was taken in by the TVA, because she is not the Loki that's supposed to exist in the sacred timeline. Tom Hiddleston Loki is, I guess. You know, the one that Thanos kills in Infinity War. But when young Sylvie is brought into the TVA, she gets the drop on them and she escapes. And so I imagine she's been living her entire life, probably hundreds of years, on the run, hiding out in apocalypses, you know. And so there's our brief glimpse into Sylvie's backstory. And so we pick up where we left off at the end of episode 3. Loki and Sylvie are hanging out on Lamentis. They're about to die because the planet's about to crash into them. And so they're like, oh, we're about to die. They take each other's hands. And it's really insinuated here that Loki starts to fall for Sylvie or something. I was like, okay. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what to think of this romance, if it is one. I mean, it's insinuated that it is throughout the entire episode, pretty much. And as far as the romance angle is concerned, I feel it, but I'm not sure about the idea. Plus, it'll probably piss off all the bisexual fans who wanted Loki to be in a guy-guy relationship. There is that too. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see how the fans react to it later on in the show, if that goes anywhere. I'm not sure if it will. But anyway, these two Loki variants, they're holding hands, they're looking into each other's eyes. That creates a Nexus event, I guess, which alerts the TVA, and so, yeah, like I predicted last week, Loki and Sylvie are in fact rescued by the TVA, and they're taken in, and as punishment, Loki is put in this kind of time loop memory prison, where for the first time since 2013, we see Lady Sif, played by Jamie Alexander. Jeez, it was so good to see her again. I was wondering where she'd been since Thor: The Dark World. We don't get the answer to that here, of course, but this is a memory of Loki where she's pissed off at him for cutting her hair, and she punches him in the face. I get that the scene's trying to make a point, but it was just good to see her again, you know? I do hear that she's gonna show up in Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't know if it's actually true or not. And also, of course, who didn't think of the time loop scene from Doctor Strange? You know, the whole Dormammu I've come to bargain thing. This scene totally reminded me of that, it being a time loop and all. There's one thing that Mobius mentions in this episode that made me go, huh. It's where he's talking to B-15, and he says, we've brought in Kree, Titans, vampires. How come these two demigods are such a pain in my ass? I was like, oh, okay. Kree I can understand, but Titans? Thanos was a Titan. But even more surprising than that was the fact that he mentioned vampires. I was like, this is early setup for Blade. Because, I mean, I don't know the first thing about Blade. I never saw the Wesley Snipes movies. But, like, one of the few things I know about Blade is that he deals with vampires. So, yeah, vampires are part of the Marvel Universe, and they're really mentioned for the first time as a legit species that lives here in this episode of Loki. I was like, that's legit. That is legitimately early setup for Blade. So that's cool. But anyway, then we get to this conversation that Mobius has with Loki after pulling him out of the memory prison. And a couple of big things happen here. First off, Mobius finds out that Loki is kind of carrying a small torch for Sylvie, or at least that's what he assesses. And he's like, oh my god, you're such a narcissist, falling in love with yourself. I was like, he's got kind of a point. Since Sylvie is in fact another version of Loki, he is falling in love with a version of himself. That is kind of narcissist. I mean, the very concept of narcissism comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, who saw a reflection of himself in the water and fell in love and just stared at it forever. And so, in a way, that's kind of what's happening here. Loki is falling in love with a reflection of himself. But then again, they are technically two different beings, you know? I mean, they're two people. And honestly, I can't blame Loki. Like, if I found a female version of myself, hell, she could even have the same name because Andy can be a girl's name too, I'd probably fall in love. Maybe that makes me a narcissist, but I mean, come on, if someone who is the exact opposite sex of you, but is a version of you, showed up, I don't know, That's just what I think in my head. But then Loki tells Mobius, he's like, you're all variants. He tells him what Sylvie told him in the last episode. And Loki tries to convince Mobius, he's like, yeah, you've had memories, you've had lives before you started working for the TVA. You had your minds wiped. And you can tell by the look on Mobius's face that he buys it. He tries to pass it off. He's like, yeah, I don't believe you. But obviously he does. And so he talks to Ravonna Renslayer about it. And holy shit, this bitch. I really think Gugu Mbatha-Raw does an excellent job in this episode as Ravonna Renslayer. Because now it seems like she is our villain of the show. Mobius is bringing up all these questions like about C20, what happened to C20, why was she talking about it was real, why can't I talk to Sylvie? And Renslayer keeps tossing his questions aside. She's like, look, it's in the past, let's just forget about it. Right there, I was like, she's got evil secrets. What is she hiding? How much does she really know about the TVA? Does she know about the timekeepers and what they really are? Which, don't worry, I'll get to, but I'm just curious. And Mobius could see it too. He's like, yeah, she's hiding something. So he steals her tempad. And he sees for himself that, yeah, Renslayer does have secrets. She's bad news. Also in this episode, we have B-15 going through trauma. Yeah, she's still traumatized by what Sylvie did to her in the second episode. So she takes Sylvie back to Roxcart. She's like, what did you do to me? It's like she's going into shock, kind of the same way that C-20 was. Except I guess she's holding it together a little better. But B-15 does get answers because Sylvie shows her straight up. She shows her memories. I wish we could have seen them, yeah. If for nothing else, just out of curiosity, what did B-15 see right here? And so once again, Sylvie is proven right because B-15's like, I looked happy. Yeah, holy shit. And then there's this big confrontation between Mobius and Loki and Renslayer because Renslayer's like, you have something that's mine. Okay, Mobius, he knows too much now. I was like, oh no, holy shit. And as his last words, he says, if I could go anywhere in time, I would go to who I was before I started working for the TVA. I was like, oh man. And yeah, Mobius is pruned, which as far as we know at this point in this episode, means he's dead. I was like, I did not see that coming. I didn't think Owen Wilson's character was gonna die here. That sucked. And that would have been enough for this episode if it had just ended right there. But no, the episode keeps going for like another 15 minutes. I was like, oh, we're not done? I guess not, because we have an even bigger scene right here. We actually get to meet the timekeepers. We're taken into this frosty-ass chamber, and Loki and Sylvie are brought before the timekeepers. I was like, holy shit, I better sit up, because I was laying back watching this episode. But then when we got here, I was like, oh, okay, I better sit up, because we're in the presence of timekeepers now. And at first, they did seem pretty scary. Their voices are booming throughout the surround sound. They're all bassy and shit. I was like, woof. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't mess with these things. But then, big shock right here. I mean, B-15 shows up and there's a little scuffle now between Loki and Sylvie and B-15 and Ravonna Renslayer and all the hunters. And we win, and then Sylvie goes for the head. She throws a dagger, she just... and it gets the head timekeeper. Okay, that was a pun, I didn't mean it. I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck did she just do? And then it's revealed, like, she picks up the head, and there are these wires and the electricity sparks coming out. I was like, what the fuck? The timekeepers are just machines? What? What is happening right now? If the timekeepers are not real, they don't exist, really. They're just machines, well, then, yeah, Loki says, who created the TVA, then? Who created these timekeeper machines to be the face of it, kind of like the Mandarin was for AIM in Iron Man 3? If the timekeepers aren't real, then who created the TVA? Who is really in charge? Is it Ravonna Renslayer? Is it Kang the Conqueror? It could be, since Ravonna Renslayer and Kang the Conqueror are romantically tied in the comics. Maybe Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror will show up in the third act of this season. I don't know, anything's possible, because it's been proven that Disney Plus Marvel shows are really good at keeping secrets. We had no idea that Lady Sif was going to show up in this episode. We had no idea that Io was going to show up in Falcon and Winter Soldier, so who knows might show up at the end of this season of Loki. But anyway, back to this episode. Oh yeah, we're not done yet, because Loki and Sylvie are like, all right, what do we do now? And Loki, it seems that he's about to like profess his love to her or something. He's like, this is new to me. I was like, okay, Loki, really? All right, here we go. But no, then he is pruned himself. I was like, what? What the fuck, Renslayer? I was like, what? Is our Loki dead now? Like, the show is called Loki. It could be about this Lady Loki Sylvie variant instead. I don't know. But then Sylvie gets the upper hand. She has Renslayer. She's like, all right, you're gonna tell me everything. And that's where this episode ends. I was like, holy shit. That was a lot. That was intense. And well, actually, that's not where this episode ends, because we have a mid-credits scene here. Loki wakes up, and so you're like, okay, so those who get pruned in the TVA don't actually die. I guess they're just sent somewhere else, maybe to another universe, a branch event that has been resolved by the TVA. And so Loki's like, am I in hell? Am I dead? And you hear this voice is like, no, you're not dead yet, but you will be if you don't come with us. And you see these other Loki variants. You see like an old man in a cheesy costume, kind of like Wanda's cheesy costume in WandaVision. There's this burly Viking variant of Loki, it looks like, and then there's a kid Loki holding a crocodile variant of Loki. I was like, what the fuck? I mean, I get that these are other variants of Loki, and I guess they all landed here somehow. I don't know what this, I do know what this place is, actually. I mean, the lighting gave it away because I recognized it from the first trailer. It's that dystopian New York City. You even see that broken down Avengers Tower on the right-hand side. And so I'm like, holy shit, all right. The third act of this season is gonna be nuts. And that's where this episode ends. I'm like, all right. I have several questions, or theories actually. Like, okay, we know that pruning someone does not kill them. It just sends them somewhere. So I imagine that Mobius is actually alive somewhere, along with every single other person that the TVA has pruned over the however long. So I do imagine that we will see Mobius again at some point, and Loki and these other Lokis are gonna gather to get back to the TVA and rescue Sylvie somehow. We're gonna find out exactly what kind of sinister plan the TVA and Renslayer are up to. Cause holy god, Renslayer, what the fuck? This was a lot. So yeah, this was me talking about the 4th episode of Loki and all the mind-blowing things that happened in it. And now once again, it's gonna feel like another 2 weeks before we get episode 5. Damn you, TVA. So, the 4th episode of Loki, titled The Nexus Event. Have you watched it yet? Well, I certainly hope so at this point. What did you think about it? Was your mind as blown as mine was? Holy shit. And what other theories and questions do you have now? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.